A true test for the Sherrone Moore era next on this week's episode of Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Clark. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
They said you can't be Ohio State. Now what?
Brady gets terrific. Throws it, and in. Touchdown, Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Go Blue, I'm Steve Deace, and just want to let you know this will be an abbreviated edition of the Michigan Podcast. Our good friend Mark Rogers, like so many others, is in the path of Hurricane Milton as we speak down there in Florida. And obviously he's in the middle of evacuating to higher ground. So please, thoughts and prayers to him and all those caught in the path of yet another devastating storm down there in the Sun Belt, and pray for all of their safety, and that hopefully by the time it hits landfall that it will have weakened and not be the level of devastation that is currently being forecasted. Nevertheless, we continue on here on Michigan Podcast, and there is still much to discuss. And maybe it's for the best we kind of do this as like an executive session, if you will. It is time, I think, for Michigan fans, in light of what transpired on Saturday, to come now and reason together. And I know the team has right now the very record I thought it would have at this juncture. Even has won the games I thought it would win. I thought it would lose to both Texas at home and Washington on the road. Nevertheless, it doesn't feel like the team is getting better. It doesn't feel like things are building to something, and there's just a couple of stumbling blocks in the way. It feels like something systemically is wrong with the Michigan football team, and therefore the Michigan program. And in this era, where this is now like the NFL, which stands for not for long, there will be no long-term rebuilds. Teams get better almost instantly. Just look to Indiana, for example, because of the transfer portal and unlimited free agency. It doesn't take a lot for a floor to cave in and really the bottom to fall out of a program, particularly when you're dealing with someone who has no head coaching experience like Sherrone Moore. Now, I want to see him succeed. I think he has a tremendous presence. I'm very grateful for the contributions he made to our team, especially last year with all of that controversy and how he guided the program through some tumultuous moments and some of the biggest wins in recent memory. However, there are some issues that need to be addressed about where things stand and therefore where they could be headed in the future. So let's address them now, shall we? And here's why I think the Sherrone Moore era is already in trouble. Number one, Washington was a much better team. Absolutely dominated the game statistically when you look at it. And Michigan fans, therefore, should be asking, how is it possible that the Huskies rebuilt better than we did despite losing even more and operating on the same timetable we had to? I mean, they were playing until January 8th, just like us, because that's who we played in the national championship game. We had 19 players from our two deep returning from that national championship game, they had 6. Okay. I mean, they had to completely overhaul the total program, coaching staff, and everything else. So how is it possible, despite losing even more than we did and being on the same timetable that we had, that Washington was truly that much better of a team? Well, all of the potential answers to this question are bad. Which brings me to number 2. The team gets worse as the game goes on every single week. We saw this against Arkansas State. We saw this against USC. We saw it against Minnesota. And then we saw it here against Washington as well. So last year's team was the most dominant team in the country in the third quarter. And for those of us that grew up in the Bo era, you remember those legendary halftime adjustments under Bo, under Mo, under Lloyd, where Michigan would come storming back in the third quarter. We're not seeing that. Is that strength and conditioning with the loss of Ben Herbert? Is that the loss of culture? Is this team flinching when the previous teams didn't pucker, but instead kind of stood up to the challenge and answered it? I don't know. I mean, we're not on the inside, but what we do know is the team gets worse as the game goes on every single week. That is a very, very bad sign. All the answers to all the potential answers to the question of why, again, all those potential answers are bad. Third, there is no real quarterback on the roster. And when you don't have a quarterback, the floor can cave in on you. The bottom can fall out. Just see Rich Rod in year 1 with Stephen Threep and Nick Sheridan. And this is the byproduct mainly of going 2 years in a row without signing a legit quarterback prospect. Or you allow yourself to go into a season with this as the best you can do. I mean, essentially, Jack Tuttle is at best a Jag. He has done nothing in 7 years of college football that's remarkable other than get injured. And yet, if you watched him on Saturday night when he came in the game, that's the best the offense has looked all year. So, we used to have a saying, by the way. We used to have a saying when the Lions went 30 years between Pro Bowl quarterbacks, Greg Landry, who just passed away, and then Matthew Stafford. The Lions went 30 years between having more than 30 years between having a quarterback make the Pro Bowl. And of course, many of those years, the Lions were also Rams or worse. And so there used to be a saying about those Lions teams that a guy was Lions good, that Eric Hipple, Gary Danielson, Mike McMahon, John Kitna, that these guys weren't good. They were Lions good. I mean, they were not objectively good players. Scott Mitchell, they were just the best player the Lions had. So is Jack Tuttle good, or is he right now Michigan good? Like, is he objectively good? Like, how many teams in the Big Ten would want Jack Tuttle to be their starting quarterback over the guy that they have? Probably not many. On the other hand, did he clearly look better than anybody we currently have? Yeah. And that's a problem. Did you hear what Jed Fish, former Michigan assistant, said at halftime when we made the switch? He said, yeah, we're going to have to play like a real defense now. They were basically playing us as a service academy. So, again, how did this happen? How did you let this occur? How did you go 2 years in a row without a quarterback prospect, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? All right, next, number 4. We look confused and undisciplined consistently on both sides of the ball. For example, we've already given up more touchdown passes and committed more quarterback turnovers on offense than we did all of last season in 15 games. Let me say that again. Michigan has already surrendered more touchdown passes on defense and committed more quarterback turnovers on offense than the Wolverines did all of last year in 15 games. We just finished game 6. Is that bad? Yes, and it points directly back to coaching. Pro Football Focus released its latest mock draft for 2025. 4 of the top 11 picks, Michigan Wolverines. So I know we lost a lot, but there is a lot of talent here. And ask yourself, I mean, heck, even if Jed Fish were our coach right now, would we look like this? Probably not. Probably not. So this all points directly back to coaching, and that has to be addressed in the bye week. And speaking of Jed Fish, he thoroughly embarrassed Wink Martindale and the Michigan defensive staff in that game. And Wink has now faced 2 former NFL OCs, and Steve Sarkisian and Jed Fish, and he was depanted by both of them. So I don't know. I mean, some of the plays that Michigan looked at on defense in space reminded me of the Greg Robinson, Rich Rod years, where it was a TV show Lost in Space, but it wasn't science fiction. It was very real, and it was a horror story. It was our reality in which we were living. I think Zeke Berry just left another guy wide open. Hey, wait, I think Makari Page just let another guy get behind him. I mean, that's what I don't know what they're trying to do. And stop with the comparisons to Don Brown. Don Brown was a phenomenal defensive coordinator here, except for the Ohio State game at the very end. But his teams were routinely in the top 5 or 10 in the nation in defense. This is one of the worst pass defenses in the country, and that's with a consensus All-American corner and maybe the best front 4 pass rush I can ever remember Michigan having. So that's all coaching again. You could have mediocre talent back there when you've got an All-American corner taking away half the field most of the time, and your front 4 can at least pressure the quarterback most of the time. You could be really you could be loaded up with jags on the back end and still be better than average with that. Maybe even better. We're below average. So that clearly is something is not resonating from an assignment standpoint, from a responsibility standpoint, from a trust standpoint. And again, that's good to point right back to coaching, and that'll have to get addressed during the bye week as well. All right, and then number 6 here. I've been following college football closely as a fan for 40 years. I have covered the sport professionally for many years. And I can tell you, it is never a good sign with a new head coach when it's the side of the ball he specializes in that is struggling. It just never is. You should at least be able to address the side of the ball that you came from. You should at least be able to address that. For example, Michigan State's offense is it's not very talented. It's definably better than it was last year. That's Jonathan Smith's side of the football. So it's better. Kurt Signetti, offensive guy. The Indiana offense operates at an exceedingly high efficiency level. And that's with a lot of new guys, including a quarterback who who was hurt 2 years ago and it was kind of mediocre in the MAC last year. So when the side of the ball that the head coach comes from is struggling, and by the way, this is his system. He coordinated this very offense last year. And a lot of these guys weren't playing, but they were getting coached. They were in our 2 deep. So, I mean, I can't think of a time that's ever been a good sign for a team. So there is a lot to address. There is a lot to fix here. And so here's my conclusion. If this is a 6-6, 7-5 team, and it could be, I think Michigan should consider moving on after year 1. This would be like getting born on third and getting picked off on the first pitch. Again, 4 of the top 11 players in PFF's latest mock draft are Wolverines. Ask yourself, how many coaches would go 6-6, 7-5 with those guys on your roster? And then ask yourself, how many of them have better jobs than Michigan? And then ask yourself, are they coaching in the Big Ten or the SEC? Because if you're not coaching in the Big Ten and the SEC, you're in the minor leagues now. Well, Steve, what about continuity? Continuity doesn't matter anymore. We have perpetual free agency. Teams can rebuild quickly on the fly. Again, just look at Indiana as one example of this. You're looking at massive roster turnover in college football every year now, like in the NFL, when 1/3 of every team's roster turns over, or every team's rosters turns over every single year. You're going to say the same thing. And the fact, by the way, that we're saying halfway through this year after winning a natty, just look at Indiana, is indicative of how far we are falling here. Now, some of you might be like, well, Steve, I thought you said you didn't care what they did as a fan. As a fan, I don't care what they did. I mean, I'm still riding the high of the national championship. You don't see me getting mad, screaming, getting upset. I'm not really mad or screaming or upset right now, but I'm just looking at it cold-blooded analytically. And to go 6-6 and 7 or 7-5 with this roster is a terrible omen for what this means moving forward. And then you're also dealing with a coach who's going to feel a lot of pressure, maybe take some shortcuts to save himself and not really look at the long-term future of the program. If we do that, just say, hey, we gave the guy his shot. It's too tough a job for year one, and we're just going to move on. And God bless you. We have and pay off your buyout, which is nothing. It's $5 million, and we'll get somebody now that has been prepared to take on a job of this magnitude. And we've got the resources and the platforms like the portal available to quickly turn things around and rebuild them. Because there's just no excuse for this. And right now, I'm just telling you right now, this is the worst coach team in the Big Ten Conference right now. Just looking at it cold-blooded analytically in terms of the level of talent to the level of performance, it's the worst coached team in the Big Ten. So a lot needs to change and a lot needs to improve, and guys are getting paid real good money to make those things happen. So we shall see here in the second half whether or not they can. All right, this week's X-Poll results. I asked you, I'm putting Michigan's revised win total for the year at 6.5. Are you taking the over and under? About 60-40. It's a little bit less than that. Are taking the over to the under. I think 7-5 is the most likely record, but I don't think winning every game but Ohio State's off the table from here, and I don't think losing every game but Northwestern is off the table from here either. That's how much variance there is right now with the shaky quarterback situation. And your stability guy is a guy that can't ever stay healthy and couldn't even stay healthy here this year. Missed all of spring, most of the fall. So, and this is a coaching staff that has never faced any of these things before. Maybe they'll do great. I hope they do. I hope that they do. I would love for Sherrone to work here. But if you're going to go 6-6 and 7-5 coming off a natty with the talent you inherited, that dog don't hunt. Now, that just can't happen here, period. That brings me to my feedback of the week. I Write Wiggle says, I will take the over, but barely. I think they go 7-5. Also, if they keep Sherrone Moore, they're wasting the 2025 season. He's clearly in over his head. The buyout is $5 million. Just move on. There's lots of good experienced head coaching options out there. I'm telling you right now, there are coaches in the ACC and the Big 12 that in the past would not have taken the job at Michigan because of the jobs they have. They will take them now. Everything other than the Big Ten and the SEC is the minor leagues now. I mean, as we're sitting here, ADs at the Big Ten and the SEC are getting ready to meet. You can just see, man, the non-aggression pact is being plotted. They're getting ready to take over and run this thing. So now I do think if you're at a top program in the ACC or the Big 12, maybe you wouldn't have moved in the past. I think you're moving now, like Jed Fish did. He left a good team behind at Arizona to get to Washington to get into the Big Ten. That's an example of what I'm talking about. So, yeah, if this is the best you can do in year one with the talent you had remaining and we helped you retain, I don't think that bodes well for the future at all. So let's hope we don't have to keep having this conversation and they turn it around. That's why they're getting paid the big bucks now. So let us know what you think. You can like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, whether you're watching here on YouTube or listening elsewhere like iTunes, and help us to do those things. It helps us to find more Michigan fans just like you. The algorithm gods, small g, they smile benevolently upon thee when you all do those things. So please keep that going. And thank you to all of you who have. Don't forget to follow us in between episodes as well at Michigan Podcast on X. No episode next week with the bye. Frankly, I don't have anything good to say. I just repeat the exact same themes. So there's no point in producing an episode just to say the same negative things I just said. All right. So we'll see you again in 2 weeks right here on Michigan Podcast. Until then, I'm Steve Deace. Go Blue.